What's going on? Boys, arm yourselves. Order development. I'm thinking, well, I have two primary topics I want to get through today, but there might be a third one. I was watching videos about robot spy animals, and we're aware on this channel animals are a lot smarter and more sentient than popular belief would have you believe. Levels of consciousness. It's not on or off. And that should be obvious, but it isn't. Now, some animals are capable of recognizing the spy as a spy. Some are even so intelligent they can play with it, have fun with it. And I would be willing to bet a small amount of money, maybe some of the smartest animals on the planet are able to recognize these spy animals or associate these spy animals as human inventions. But without constant interaction, direct interaction with humans, and without the great ziggurat that is language, I'd be willing to bet a medium amount of money they can't conceptualize what we're doing with the spy animals or what we're doing with the data we've gathered. I.e., I don't imagine an octopus would be able to imagine, even to understand the idea that the spy animal is gathering information that other people are going to upload on the internet, and then that video of this octopus is going to be discussed by other higher consciousness beings. I'd be willing to bet a medium amount of money that octopus can't get that far mentally. And if we're doing patterning, it stands to reason, obviously, easily, higher powers are putting things that we would perceive as familiar to spy on us, and then do some kind of equivalent to what we're doing with spy animal data. Easy. You've thought of that. You've probably. I do think that's going on. I'd be willing to bet there are spy animal people in existence. But something else hit me. Animals are clever enough to recognize a camera, just as a camera, as something that isn't supposed to be there. That's why we engineered spy animals. We need to get a little bit craftier. So, what would a higher powers equivalent of getting a little bit craftier be? Because I'd be willing to bet enough humans would be able to recognize a spy animal person, and maybe already were unnerved by them. Because on some level, we're high enough consciousness we can detect an irregularity in that medium, that familiar medium. So to get craftier, I think they would need to change the medium. Pick something we wouldn't expect to find surveillance in. I'm thinking bugged emotions. We might recognize a person looks wrong. That motherfucker isn't real. But would we question a weird emotion? You might recognize whatever emotion you're feeling is irregular. Came on a little too quickly, came out of nowhere. Maybe even makes you uncomfortable. Maybe you feel like you're being watched. But you absolutely wouldn't imagine those feelings as products of surveillance. For two reasons. One, I don't think we're at a level yet we could imagine how emotions could be used as surveillance tools. And two, plus ergo two, every system of thought, scientific or mystical, will argue these weird emotions can be explained in any number of ways. And it doesn't matter which or on which spot the chips fall, all that matters is it is not surveillance. So, in other words, if higher powers were conducting surveillance on us using emotions, we aren't equipped even to begin to imagine how something like that would be possible, and there are much easier, readier explanations. Animal sees a spy animal, it thinks that's weird, maybe, if it gets even that far, but whatever. A human feels a spy emotion, they think that's weird, but whatever. Everything is patterning. When you're doing as above, so below thinking, wherever you see cleverness, if you see cleverness on a level you can understand, you need to assume there's cleverness you don't understand going on and try to think outside the box. And I'm not saying surveillance emotions are what are going on, but I am saying there is probably something going on, and if it is, it's not going to come in a form we expect it to. Reality feels like tons of different levels and degrees of consciousness and scale, but ringing through them all are constant laws and principles. So what can be, or not what can be done, right? Because that's a limiting way to think about it. But things, people, or material of reality stuff does, and the means by which those things can be accomplished at different levels. As in deception. Microbes deceive each other. Insects deceive each other. Plants deceive each other. Animals deceive each other. Humans deceive each other. Governments deceive each other. I'd be willing to bet higher powers deceive each other. Maybe even, in a way we can observe, planets and space and time, or locations in space and time, deceive each other. Maybe we aren't there yet, but that is something we theoretically could wrap our minds around. Deception on all levels, carried out on each level according to the laws governing that level. To store information might be another one. DNA contains data. Data moons contain or would contain data. Archiving from atomic to galactic. And now the second section, back to a more grounded level. I think one of the reasons I bounce off people I'm attracted to so hard, and not in the romantic sense, but in the magnetic sense. You've met people you are struck by and naturally drawn to. I think one of the reasons those connections never last is those people have their own jobs to do. Or maybe they are supposed to lead towards something different. So you're drawn to each other by shared position. Or if we're using the Gnostic idea, two psychics knock heads because they have souls, but for some reason, cooperation there never works, it never lasts. Probably because someone needs to be in charge, and humans don't do sharing well. One leader has a vision and hands down responsibilities, gives directives, or in my view of things, one great clerk receives the transmission, which it then decodes and distributes, but there is always one pinnacle. And I think the mistake, well, I think we've made many mistakes. One is trying to liberate and train leaders. Why are you doing that? It's like the Oni plays swamp chimpanzee hypothetical. There's a chimpanzee sinking in the swamp. It would be a good moral thing to help the chimpanzee out, but what are the odds the moment you get it out, it's going to be freaked out, tensed up, and maul you? You can't trust people. People don't want to be helped. It's not your right to help people. You might not be helping them. Another little story reminder thing about the helpful chimpanzee who rescues the fish in the river from drowning. puts him up in a tree so he doesn't drown the fish. And let's say you do help someone and they want to be helped, and you manage to give them good help and they develop independence and power. The first thing they're going to do is attack you. Invariably. Stop helping potential leaders, potential adepts. At best, it is unprofitable, huge waste of time, and annoying. At worst, it's going to ruin your shit. The second mistake, stop trying to be fair and reasonable and help people in general. For every potential leader out there, someone just with the potential probably never will realize it. There are 1,000 born followers. People who experience life's problems but don't want to do anything about it and are terrified of taking responsibility for themselves. Or another way of putting it, unclaimed biological medium. Living canvas across which you can paint your will. If you can figure out how to. If you can develop the nerve to. There are so many people out there who would love for you to tell them what to do. For you to exploit them and sell them on a dream. Or sell them on reality even. Just so long as they don't need to take responsibility for their own actions. And if they get frustrated with you, if they get fed up with it, bin them. There are those sorts of people are a dime a dozen. People who want to be told what to do because they don't know what to do. They don't want to try to figure out what to do, and they don't want to be responsible for what they do. In reality, the captain's chair unnerves people. Most people don't want to go anywhere near it. Some people get near it because they think they want it, and the energy of it drives them off. Other people get in, sit down, and then get ripped apart by it. I saw that happen recently. If you can figure out how to bear the strain, you can get people to work for you. Think of some popular independent talking heads. Where are they getting their power from? They're getting their power from morons who can't or won't think for themselves, but want to believe in something. And in most cases are happy not to need to think for themselves, because that's scary. What if you're wrong? There's strength in numbers, and the talking head I am subscribed to on Patreon controls hordes. I think those are the sorts of people we need to start focusing on. Stupid, loser suckers easily parted with their money or their skill, whatever, for the fantasy they are safe and correct. You're never safe and you're never correct. But you can collect from people who would give up anything never to acknowledge that. And then you can fund things you care about. Either investing in your security or your capabilities, or start building infrastructure or the skeleton of a system. A system not designed to help the world at large, but instead to reward people for spreading your meme, or making them reliant on your meme. And while we aren't at any of these levels yet, they are kicking around in the noggin. This is the way every interest group works, by the way. It uses your separating features to separate you, says it's protecting you from this enemy, and that enemy may be real, but it's probably not, it's probably exaggerated, right? It's probably a mixture of a bunch of different things, some of which are harmful, others of which aren't, but which look bigger and scarier all put together. It claims it's protecting you, and would like your money, but doesn't need it. What it really needs is for you to spread the word, to spread awareness, so other people, if you don't want to give money, other people will show up and give money. When in reality, They are spending none of that money on protecting you. They are taking your money, they are using your numbers to make their voice sound louder, and they're investing all of that money and that influence into expanding their money-making systems or putting it directly into their pockets. No protection ever goes on. It is just a fantasy. And these groups profit off each other by hating each other. Because the more hatred and fear there is going on, the more dummies they can convince. So they benefit from each other. It's a beautiful thing. I'm trying to work out the minimum amount of whatever it is one of these unpeople needs to feel they are a member of something and to continue funding it. Is it just the feeling of being in a group that makes you feel understood even though you aren't? That, what's the word? Illusory camaraderie? No, it's the thing in an oasis. A mirage. Mirage camaraderie. Is it feeling like you have a better idea of what's going on than anyone else does? Is it feeling like these stupid rituals these snake oil salesmen tell you to do actually are improving your life? Is that what it is? Is it feeling like you're having an impact on something? Is it feeling understood by people? Is it the feeling everything is going to be okay? It's probably all these things and others, but the amounts in the mixture I haven't worked out yet. And unfortunately, as a point of pride and vanity, and we'll do a video on sins sometime, I don't want to sell a lie or a product concept I don't have faith in, which makes things difficult, because our entire program it's almost an inversion of what one of these groups would offer. We don't offer you anything positive. It's all negative. Aside from maybe purpose and the resources to feel like you're becoming independent, mentally and spiritually. You can walk on a road without getting anywhere and still say you are walking on the road because you are walking on the road, even if other people are getting somewhere. Maybe we sell it as a stiff drink. But the other issue is I hate people, and I have a hard time not doing or saying something when I smell Heilig shit in someone's trousers. I don't want them around me. But how do you get money from someone you have naked contempt for and nothing comforting to tell them? Well, I think it's a mixture of some people really are just that fucking stupid, and two, you can develop a biological barrier. People who are better at dealing with those sorts of people. This is where INFJs and ENTJs come in. You can't shake them. INFJs you keep in a planet's Goldilocks zone. They are close enough to you to hear what you have to say, to be interested in you, and most importantly, to start idealizing you, but not so close they can touch you and see you clearly and realize you don't match up, the real you does not match up to this impossible ideal of you they have created. When you keep INFJs close enough but not too close, they will naturally radiate your message out to the world. Most of the people who, the ones I can verify anyway, who share my videos, again, on a platform I can verify, almost always it is INFJs and ENTJs. ENTJs less than INFJs. And I think that construction works, right? Because INFJs might not need to be seen as at the top, but they need to feel like they're at the top of whatever group they're part of. So if you let them near you, firstly, if they were idealizing you, they're going to come to hate you very quickly and resent you. Probably not say anything, but then you'll see they are undermining you, most likely fueled by that resentment and whatever is going on in their heads. So, in keeping them away from you, they can have their little thrones and, while, rather, infecting everyone they're dealing with your memes. Because their idea of your memes make them feel superior. Whether they are or aren't superior, whether their idea of you is even close to reality, doesn't matter. As long as they are feeding influence your way. ENTJs. The average ENTJ, and even high-end ENTJs, are not in and of themselves leaders. They're more like quarterbacks than they are coaches. You'll notice even the highest end ENTJs want to serve something. Probably are serving something. Whether that is a person they admire and have admired for a long time, was very important to them in their life at some point, or a concept. They don't lead, they serve. And when they're leading, they are serving by leading. And the thing I'm coming to understand is they aren't even really good leaders necessarily. The most you can expect from an ENTJ, or what you can rely on them for, is they are advanced accomplishers. You give them a task a standard drone is not going to be able to deal with. And then, if you've done the correct work on the ENTJ, they go out and do it. You make them feel special, you give them a purpose, and they'll take a stone off your back. And of course, eventually they're going to try to kick your feet out from under you, but presumably by that time you'll have countermeasures. You really can't trust anybody. You can't rely on them for very long, if at all. And then the third part of all this, connecting with the second. Gustave Le Bon, prestige. Why do judges and officers dress funny? Because by communicating their import visually, especially when you already know what these visuals mean, they get a lot done instantly, without needing to expend any of their own labor or time. If you dressed up as a police officer, which you shouldn't, and just go into a place people are going to act differently around you, because the way you look communicates a set of ideas and threats to them. But to add on to Le Bon's idea, I think some people are better at selling prestige than others are. And I don't think that's something you can teach. I think that's something you need to learn. For example, in late middle or early high school, I was wear a suit guy. And it had the opposite effect I thought it would have. Because of course it did. The suit does not make the man. You look like someone playing dress up when you do things unrighteously, because that is what you're doing. Whether it's clothes or taking an action or speaking certain words, if you aren't built for those clothes, those actions, or those words, you're going to look like a clown because that's what you are. You're playing dress up. However, when you are doing it righteously, when you have reached some kind of a point, those things can enhance your prestige. For example, I like dressing ratty. Even when I'm dressing intentionally, I like the elements of my style to communicate a level of discomfort. That's probably never going to change. But recently, I have been experimenting with getting a bit dressier while staying ratty, because I discovered my raise is a little bit more than I thought it was. I can afford to invest in some moderately decent, nice looking clothing while maintaining my style. And it does make a difference. And I bring this up for two reasons in the order development sphere. Prestige, I think, is a tool and a ruler. If you can pull off something prestigious where previously you couldn't, you know you've grown some, expanded your powers. And on the tool front, this is something you can use. If you present yourself as prestigious and people buy it because they perceive you as someone who should be prestigious, you have more influence over them. Right? A way of thinking about this. So everything, every single thing, ultimately comes down to force. But even knowing that, why don't you go around being forceful? Or why are groups who have the ultimate monopoly in force forceful from the beginning? Because even though everything comes down to force, force is expensive and it's risky. You probably could win a fight, but why even risk it when you could win the fight without fighting? Charisma, prestige, intimidation. There's another speech skill, deception. Speech as a skill is important because it is a means of getting your way without taking the risk of force. If speech fails, you can go back to force, but it's so much less expensive and so much faster just to convince somebody. There was something else I wanted to talk about, but I forgot what it was. So, before we cut things off here, do me a favor. What are some of your biggest general or conceptual frustrations with life at the moment? I'm going to try to turn that short story anthology into a proper novel, because in terms of narrative and timeline, it lines up enough too. And I want to start working on that SOA handbook. And I think starting with problems is the way to go. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.